Welcome back to the 1-0 Pod. I'm Seth Engle.
I'm Spencer Ripchik.
And today we're going to discuss a lot. We had our first media availability since the Rose Bowl on Tuesday, so we got to talk to James Franklin. We heard from Marques Hagans, the new wide receivers coach. For the first time, that was his intro presser. And then all of the first-year players, such as Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, Abdul Carter, they were all made available, which I don't believe we had last year. I haven't ever seen anything like that before. So main takeaways yesterday, specifically with Hagans, what should Penn State fans know from his first intro presser?
Well, first takeaway from Hagans, he did checked all the boxes. I think he was pretty impressive. He pretty much gave a spiel on why he came to Penn State, what he's going to do at Penn State, and I think from hearing him, he sounds like Penn State might have made the right decision with they're not firing Tara Stubbersfield, but picking him because he seems like he knows what he's doing. He seems like he came here with a goal in mind, which I think is very important for Penn State wide receiver room they've had their stars, but they've kind of struggled depth-wise, and now they don't really know what they're going to be with Mitch Tinsley gone, Parker Washington gone. So, yeah, I think it was pretty good for Marques yesterday.
Yeah, I think this wide receivers room, even before Taylor Stubberfield was on his way out, I think there were a lot of question marks. As you mentioned, Mitch Tinsley and Parker Washington leaving, those are the top two receivers. You say, okay, well, where's Penn State going to go from here? Is Keandre Lambert-Smith going to be the number one? And at this point, things look up for the Penn State receiving room. You bring in two, great transfers in Malik McClain and Dante Cephas, who still has yet to sign, but very highly touted. And then you bring in a guy like Marques Hagans, who, we've heard only good things about, and he seems like a great man. He seems like a culture guy, first and foremost. I mean, he seems like a guy who fits Penn State's culture really well, and kind of what they're trying to build. They want that consistency, and I think it just kind of shows if one guy, if maybe Taylor, wasn't, fitting with their system the way Franklin wanted it to go, he can send him off and bring someone in who he thinks fits better, and I think Hagans is that guy.
Yeah, I think from yesterday, like you said, he's a culture guy. I think from what he was talking about, he's a big family-oriented guy, which James Franklin is probably one of the most family-oriented coaches I've ever heard of. And again, he's going to help all those new receivers that he brought in. And one of the big points of emphasis yesterday from the media availability was that Malik McClain is looking like one of the most impressive receivers they've brought in a while.
Right.
James Franklin mentioned him a bunch. Said he's checked all their boxes, passed all their tests really well, and not like another guy that he said both the transfers, him and Storm Duck, have also looked very well.
Yeah, Malik McClain's really interesting because he's 6'4", 200 pounds, just a really unique build. But what I heard from Caden Saunders yesterday is that this guy he's fast. I mean, that's what really makes him a complete receiver. Is not just the fact that he's a big build, but the fact that he can move like a smaller guy, but he's also so much larger. So I'm interested to see kind of what they do with McClain because they haven't really had that type of, big receiver since I think Juwan Johnson in 2018. Yeah. It's been a while. I asked Jerry Cross if he expects McClain to have any work with the tight ends. Maybe they use him as a hybrid. He said he hasn't heard anything about that. So, it should be interesting. It should add an element to that offense. But like you mentioned as well, Storm Duck has had, some great praise. Franklin says he's, quote unquote, very business-like. He handles his business. He's quiet. He just goes to work. How do you think Storm Duck's going to fit in with that secondary this year?
I don't know. This secondary, again, has quite a few question marks. Kalen King is going to be that guy at corner one. Jair Brown's gone, and so is Joey Porter Jr. So there's holes everywhere in that secondary. So I think Storm Duck can plop in there somewhere. Johnny Dixon will trade off some snaps. But I think if Storm Duck can work his way in there, I think he'll be a major impact. And it seems like he's already on pace to do that with all the stuff that they've heard. He's breaking all their benchmarks. So
yeah, I might have to disagree with you there, honestly. I think that the secondary next season could honestly surpass that of this year. I know you're losing guys like Jair Brown and Joey Porter Jr., who are two big leaders, and Joey's obviously, arguably the best corner in the country this past season. But Kalen King was quietly, a superstar this year. didn't make the All-Pro first team like Joey did, but I mean that's a guy that I think could very well end up being a first-round pick in the future as well. And then Johnny Dixon improved tremendously over the past year, and I think Storm Duck kind of comes in there, and that's a crazy big three. I mean the fact that one of those three guys is not going to start at the beginning of the season says a lot about where the room is. And Daquan Hardy over at the nickel, I think is solid, and I mean those safeties as well. I mean, we saw Zakit Wheatley flash last year.
Keaton Ellis coming back.
Keaton Ellis is coming back too. Yeah, it's a pretty loaded room, but as you said, I mean there are question marks based on leadership. That was the big thing yesterday, was leadership. Franklin says that's his main, thing he wants to take away going into winter workouts here. What did you take away from Franklin's presser, specifically how he talked about leadership, and who are some guys you think could step up?
Well, I think his big thing was last year, the leaders were already known. I mean, you had Sean Clifford, you have Jair Brown, you had P.J. Mustipher. The leaders already know who they're going to be. This year, all three of those guys are gone, so who the heck is going to be the leader? Mm-hmm. And he mentioned that one of the leaders, even though he's young, is going to have to be Drew Aller. I mean, every starting quarterback has to be a leader. They lead the offense. And he mentioned Bo there too, who has to step up too and be a leader as well. Even though they're just sophomores, they still have to be a leader. Like you said earlier, I think Abdul will probably be a leader on defense, even though Curtis Jacobs will definitely be a more vocal role. But Abdul will have to step up too, because they don't have some of the guys on the defense like Jair, who is such a vocal guy. And I think some of the more veterans on the defensive line too could be leaders, especially on the offensive line too. Right. Like Olu could also be a leader, and he's going to be a leader because he's going to be, again, one of the best offensive tackles in the nation.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because coming into last year, Franklin had said it time and time again, was that, that class, that 2022 recruiting class, he probably had not seen a group of freshmen come in and make such a quick impact as much as they did. But with that comes this, quick role as a leader. You know what I mean? If you're going to start all 13 games of the year, or you're going to start even 5 or 6 like Abdul Carter did, and make a name for yourself and make a big impact, I mean, you're going to have to step up and kind of stand out amongst your position room. So with Drew Aller, even though he has yet to start a football game, he's called upon this year. Penn State didn't bring in, a veteran quarterback from the transfer portal. They didn't kind of fill Christian Veilleux's shoes or Sean Clifford's shoes of that, old seasoned vet. They're relying on these two now, I guess, sophomore and redshirt freshman quarterbacks to step up when neither have started a football game before. So, I mean, yeah, that should be a question mark, especially when there are questions about, Drew's ability to be vocal, to yell at his teammates sometimes, to stand out and stand up when things need to be said. Abdul Carter, I don't worry about that as much.
No, yeah.
I kind of think that he'll be able to handle his own, and I think him and Jacobs are gonna lead that room well. Manny Diaz does a good job of, being pretty vocal and energetic already. So that's kind of the culture that linebacker room is built. And then Olu, as you mentioned, I think there's going to be a lot of vocal leaders on that O-line. I think Hunter Norsad's another guy. And then, but the tight ends, Theo Johnson is a pretty obvious one there.
Yeah.
But I mean, Tyler Warren is, another one. He's played his fair share of ball over the past few years. So I think as winter workouts go along and spring ball approaches, I think some of those leaders will start to stand out more. But what are your main takeaways or question marks as we approach the spring?
Yeah, I think just the leadership role in general, and also, I mean, we haven't really seen too much from the receiver room, but I feel like in the offseason, before they got all those transfers, there was a major question, and still, we haven't seen the receivers come in yet, so it still could be a question mark as well. But I think, and another person I don't think we mentioned as a leader, and he mentioned yesterday, James Franklin, is Nick Singleton.
Oh, for sure.
He's definitely going to be a leader on that team. He's probably, he's probably the most explosive player on the offense, and Nick he seemed very shy. I mean, so did Drew last year, But apparently now in winter workouts already, he's been very vocal. I think he won the winter workout of the day play. Yeah, the competitor of the day. Yeah. So he's already taken over that role, even though like last year they had so many veteran running backs and they all just dipped. Him, Kevon, Devin Ford, those are all the vets. And now it's Nick Singleton in his second year taking over a running back room who's known for producing great running backs. So yeah, that's my takeaways.
Yeah, I mean that, and then also for me would be, looking at that second kind of wave of first-year guys from this past season. As Franklin mentioned in his press conference, is like, okay, well, you guys saw, that first wave of major impact players like Singleton and Abdul Carter and Drew Aller, but there's another level. I mean, they had, 28, 29 guys in that recruiting class. There are going to be other people to start to step up this year. So my big thing heading into the spring is okay, who are those guys going to be? Who are the guys who are starting to devote themselves more than others? Because this is when that separation starts, is when it's like, okay, well, these guys are working harder than everyone else. That alone, will earn you some potential playing time down the road, and just more opportunities, more reps in general. So that's the one thing I'm looking for. And I think we'll start to see that, as the months continue. But I think that's pretty much it for us. I'm Seth Engle.
I'm Spencer Ripchik.
So Want to Know Pod, and you can follow us at collegian.psu.edu and then at Twitter at PSU Footblog. Peace.